Are you ready to take your business to the next level? Every day there are countless books and articles that are published offering the key on how to make your business a success. It's easy to feel overwhelmed trying to keep up and run your business. That's why Deb Creer created the Business Power Hour. Keep up on the latest trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. Let the Business Power Hour do the heavy work for you.
Good morning. Good morning. I am Deb Creer, and I am passionate about giving professionals the tools that they need to make themselves and their businesses as successful as possible. And we're going to have a great discussion today about a very interesting business that my guest has started, as well as something that unfortunately could apply to so many people. And I say, unfortunately, you'll know what we're talking about in a little bit, but it is something that is very passionate to me. And again, you'll know why when we jump into this. So please join me in welcoming Marissa Rusnow to our program today. Welcome, Marissa. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing great. Thank you.
Perfect. Well, let me tell folks a little bit about you, and then we'll jump into this. And after that intro, folks, we're going to have fun. Trust me on this. We're going to have a great time. So as a survivorship coach, Marissa Rusnow collaborates with clients to prioritize self-care, establish healthy boundaries, and embrace healing after life-altering events. Survivorship coaching focuses on embracing the new version of themselves with empowerment, fostering resilience, and inner peace, enabling individuals to transition from survival mode to thriving in their personal journeys. So again, Marissa, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so honored to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, and we were introduced by a mutual friend, and I love it when that happens because it is a very small world, and you never know, how things can connect, and when you're going to go, oh, wow, nice.
That was meant to be.
Yes. So, go ahead and tell us a little bit about how it is that you got to where you are today, because it is not a journey that you had planned on.
No, the universe works in mysterious ways. I was diagnosed with breast cancer in March of 21.
Okay.
And my 8-year treatment plan turned into a 3-year because of complications. Okay. It turns out I had a gene mutation, which prolonged my treatment. It was actually a blessing in disguise, though. I ended up completing, I knew I wanted to be a life coach. I ended up completing my certification course during my first round of chemo.
Okay.
And I was like, well, what is my niche? Because they tell you have to do your niche and all this.
Yes, I'm a marketing person. I'm going to say niche.
So, as I was in my treatment, I knew I wanted to help survivors in some way. I just didn't know how. And once I came to the end of my treatment center had what they called a survivorship class, but it was more of just the medical procedures they wanted you to keep.
Okay.
We want you to do this, do that. It wasn't so much of helping, which that's not their job. They're supposed to get you clear medically, and they did. So yeah, they just handed me this sheet of paper with this little survivorship tips on it, and I'm like, oh, what?
That's it?
Like, I just rode a roller coaster through hell, and you give me a piece of paper? So it was just in that instant that I was like, you know what, this is it. I got really close to a lot of my nurses there, and one of my nurses, she wanted feedback on how the survivorship class was, and I was just like, you know what, it's great medically, but it doesn't help people emotionally, spiritually, anything like that. She was like, yeah, we're lacking in that area. And I was like, this is what I need to do. I'm starting my life over again, and I know there's so many people that are in the position that I'm in. So that's how I became a survivorship coach.
I love it. And as we said, fate intervenes and kind of points us in the right direction. For those who have not listened to my program before, I was diagnosed 10 years ago with, breast cancer. And I've had 2 other diagnoses of other cancers in between now and then. I'm actually still in active treatment. So 10 years into this, I still go in every 21 days. Now that is pretty unusual. For the most part, people don't do that, or they might be on like a maintenance type, or they might be taking like an oral medication, things like that. But, it did lead me to start some new initiatives to help those who have cancer. And, but the survivorship is something that I talk about a lot with other people. And especially because, as you said, it's a life altering thing.
Mm-hmm.
You are literally dealing with it 24/7, even if you're not at a doctor's office.
All consuming.
Yeah, all sorts of things. And you're doing all of this, and then poof, you're done. And that's what really freaks people out, and one of the things that people told me is they said they made appointments anyway, because they got so attached to their care team. And we also are thinking the what ifs.
Right.
What if, and obviously anytime there's a what if, you can call and schedule an appointment with one of your care providers. But, it really is something that we are focused on it so much, and it is so intense, and then it ends. Yep. And so, talk me through the process of, how do you work with people to survive that?
Yeah, I start with like where they are now. Like you said, if you're just in that what if and, all that, you're not really living your life. Mentally, you're still in treatment.
Right.
Yes, it did happen, but like you have to find a way to like move forward with your life in a healthy way. And I find, like you said, instead of making appointments, like why don't you ask the treatment center if you can volunteer? That's what I did.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Some of the patients there, they just light up when they know that you're a survivor because they can talk to you and open up to you.
You speak their language.
Yes, they understand, and it's very comforting for them because they're like, oh gosh, you were sitting in this chair and now, you're living your life. And just to help people find their purpose. Like you said, for me, my corporate job, it was okay. It was good. It paid my bills, but it wasn't fulfilling. Like I got no enjoyment out of sitting at a computer for 9 hours a day and then sitting in traffic for another hour. Like that wasn't fulfilling to me.
Right.
So yeah, I knew my first day back at work, I'm like, I'm giving myself a year tops. Like I got to get my ducks in a row and skedaddle out of here because this is not my purpose. So it's just helping people be aware of the toxic patterns and cycles that they're in and helping them find things that get them moving forward. Like, okay, this doesn't work, but let's find things that do.
Right.
And usually that's attached to you finding inner peace and your purpose.
Right. And one of the things, and I'm sure you hear this too, it's I hear it all the time, is I can't wait to get back to normal. What do you tell people when they tell you that?
That is one of the biggest lies.
You're not going back. Sorry, folks.
No, the way I describe it to people is like, for me, I describe the treatment journey as a roller coaster through hell because it brings you to your bottom mentally, physically, spiritually. And then once you get off that roller coaster and you get into survivorship, you enter the twilight zone. Like everyone's still been bustling around and doing their thing. And you're just like, I'm different on the inside. I don't relate to this. So that's how I explain it to people. You're in the twilight zone and you start to realize like, okay, maybe there were some things in my old life that contributed to me getting sick. Chronic stress, we all know it leads to.
Oh yeah. Not eating well, pointing at myself.
Yes. Like all this is connected. So it's that. And just encouraging people to not resist that. It's okay if you get back to your job like I did and realize this isn't for me. But like, let's find your purpose. So like you wake up every day and you're excited to do what you do.
Right. And I tell people it's a new normal, right? And that actually I think is a character name in a cartoon. But yeah, it's, we don't go back. Now, if you had, a pretty, I hate to say minor cancer because cancer's cancer, but if say it was, fairly simple, easy to treat skin cancer, and some other things, you might get closer to being able to go back to what it was before, because it really could have just been what it was the day before. Right. And so, but it's those who had surgery, had treatment, had, all of these various things. Or, maybe they chose the non-traditional type of things, but still, you went through this journey and you did come out on the other end. But, you mentioned, roller coaster from hell. I tell people you're going down the train track and there's that light that's coming towards you, right? And are you going to jump off or are you going to get hit by that train? And it really is something that changes us. And
absolutely.
Yeah.
You get off that roller coaster a completely different person.
Right. And it's so hard, and God bless them. People who have never gone through that, they don't understand it, and they don't, and yay, right? I'm glad that they don't.
Absolutely.
But it is, and that's one of the things, like I mentioned, I'm 10 years into this. I, still do posts on Facebook, updating people, all these various things. And I joke about the fact that, they're probably going, still? Really? Isn't she done with this? And it's like, no, but the funny thing is, or the truth of the matter, when you're done, and I'm putting that in my air quotes for people who are listening, so your doctors have said, go away. You've maybe rung the bell, right? All of those various things, you are still living with it.
Absolutely.
There's that shadow, that elephant in the room, that whatever cliche you want to have, you are still, anytime you cough, you sneeze, you feel something. Right? You're like, oh my God, what is this lump bump? Oh, it's a mosquito bite, right? But yeah, it's and I don't think that ever goes away. That stark terror of what if.
No, I believe they coined a term. It's called scanxiety. Whenever you go in your maintenance scans, like you're just overwhelmed with anxiety. Like, oh my gosh, what if I find something? What if it's something else? And you still freak out, waiting for your results.
Right.
I mean, it's just how it is. It's a little bit of PTSD. Like you've been through that. You can't just say, oh, it's fine. You freak out.
Right. And I love that you mentioned scanxiety, because it's there. And, it's one of those things, because you don't get the results right away. I mean, you just can't. It's got to be read by somebody and all of that good stuff. And so whatever that time period is, you have freaked yourself out. You've convinced yourself it's back. It's horrible. It's awful. I mean, even when you're feeling 100%, and again, your 100% is now different, right? But yeah, I mean, you might have no symptom, nothing at all. But during that time period, and then if it's longer, right? And just various things. Like I had an ultrasound earlier this year for my thyroid cancer. It was just a checkup, no big deal. I mean, you have the scan before you have your checkup. And the tech, and I love all my techs. I mean, they, and God bless them, they have really hard jobs. And so she's doing this scan, and she took extra time with one spot, and she went back to it several times. Enough that now I don't ask, because she can't tell me, right? But the fact that there was an area that she went over and over, and then went back and went over, I'm thinking, yeah. And then of course I got the report that came to me at the same time the doctor got it. So he didn't have a chance to talk to me first, which there's good and bad about that, right? And it said, there is something there. And I hit the panic button. I was like, nah, danger, and it turned out to be absolutely nothing. But for a couple weeks, I was back in terror mode.
Yep, that happens to a lot of people. It happens to me too. Like my doctor, she knows now when she comes into the room to first and foremost tell me my scans are clear.
Yes. Oh yeah. Blood work's good. Whatever.
But tell me that I'm good first before we chit chat.
Right.
So yeah, it's something that you just have to move on with in your life.
Yeah.
And I try really hard to, when I catch myself falling into that, like, okay, so what is me working myself up to a tizzy going to do?
Right. Aside from giving yourself an ulcer.
Exactly. even God forbid if there is something that,
Right.
is
Hmm.
worrisome,
Hmm.
like I can't deal with it
Hmm.
until then.
Right. Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is, and they are all doing the best that they can. I mean, we whine and we complain about how long it takes. It's just going to happen, right?
Right.
And but it's such a weird thing. And we talk about the online charts, and we were talking about this before we started the program, that we get that information sometimes before the doctor or your medical
Hmm.
team has a chance to review it and say no danger, or oh, you need to come in, right? Whatever it is. And the issue is we read it and we go, what are those big words? We don't know. And
Yeah, the
so
medical
then,
jargon.
yes, so then we do the really bad thing. And I've done this. Folks, don't do this. Dr.
Dr. Google.
Google is
Nope.
not your friend.
Nope.
And and it's funny because I was talking with somebody over the weekend who's I had to see her on Sunday because Saturday they spent all day at Emory doing scans for her husband. And so I said, is, checkups, or is there an issue? And she said, it's mainly just, checkup type of things. And she said, but we learned we don't even look. We do not go to my chart, even when it says your test results are available. You just don't look. And she said, we're seeing the doctor, or we're going to hear from them within a couple of days anyway. And so they are able to go into it with the mindset of it's going to be okay. And let's be
Right.
honest, it's going to be okay no matter what, right? We're going to deal
Right.
with it. But she said, yeah, we don't look because we've scared ourselves too many times, and it's just not worth it. And I don't know, I still look. I'm like,
It's hard not to because you want to know, you want that
right.
reassurance.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
dang
I
if it
had a
doesn't
scan.
remind you,
Yeah.
hello, we said you have
Yeah.
test results.
Yeah. No, I had to scare my first checkup
Mhm.
after I had my
Mhm.
reconstruction. And it scared me because my doctor usually, she'll read my
Mhm.
charts, put everything's
Right.
okay. But she called me and I was
Oh
like,
yeah. Oh yeah. When
holy
when they
crap.
come up in caller ID, you're like, that's not good.
Yeah, my
Mhm.
doctor does not call me
Mhm.
unless it's something serious. And she
Mhm.
was just like, hey, did you hurt yourself? Knock
Mhm.
something into your boob?
Mhm.
I'm like, no. She was like,
Mhm.
well, there's something lighting up. She was like, I
Mhm.
can't,
Mhm.
it's
Mhm.
it's faint, but like
Right.
I want to
Mhm.
know what it is too.
Mhm.
And I got to thinking and I was just like, you know what? I just had my surgery
Mhm.
about 3 weeks ago.
Right.
My body's still healing. It's been
Yeah. Oh
traumatized
yeah.
for three
Yep.
years straight.
Mhm. Mhm.
you know,
Right.
so she was like, that's what I was thinking too,
Mhm.
but I just wanted to be
Mhm.
sure, for your and
Mhm.
my peace
Right.
of mind, I'm still going to schedule you
Yeah,
another
let's double
scan.
check. Mhm.
I'm going to give your body a
Right.
couple more weeks and
Mhm.
we'll do another
Mhm.
scan. And, my
Mhm.
second scan came in clear, everything. And that's what it was. My
Mhm.
body was just
Right.
still
Oh
healing from
yeah.
everything.
Well, and I had one of those. I had a scan, and on my good side, the lymph nodes lit up.
Hmm.
And I'm like, oh my God. And then, and I got the call, hey, what's going on? And my brain actually kicked in and said, I shouldn't have done the scan then, because I had a COVID vaccine on that side
Oh,
2 days before, right? And so my lymph nodes were doing what they were supposed to do. They had
right.
activated to deal with having that injection.
Hmm.
Which I actually found comforting, right? To know, okay, well, it worked the way it was supposed to
They're
work.
working.
Yeah, but yeah, it was like, oh my God. And on my first MRI that I had when I was very first diagnosed, same thing, lymph nodes on the bad side lit up. And that was when we got, a little overexcited. But on that same arm, I had a massive, icky, nasty case of poison ivy.
Oh my goodness.
And so, my doctor said, and we had done several needle biopsies that came back negative, and so we weren't overexcited about much. And and she said, I am pretty sure that this is because of that poison ivy. Your lymph nodes are going, danger, danger, must heal, which, what lymph nodes do. And she said, but let's pull some lymph nodes just to be sure. And then it kind of went downhill because 8 of 12 lymph nodes had cancer. But the good thing was, she said, let's, like your doctor, let's not trust it. Let's be safe. And
Yep.
so folks, when you get the bejesus scared out of you and they say, we want to do a follow-up, take a deep breath, meditate,
Yep.
do whatever you need to do, but have those follow-up tests.
Yep. And on the other side of that spectrum, if you have to learn how to advocate for yourself. If
Right.
you know
Oh yeah.
with every fiber of your
hmm
being something
hmm
is wrong and your
hmm
doctor is being
hmm
dismissive,
Right.
advocate for
hmm
yourself. Like,
hmm
no, I want this
hmm
test.
Right.
And if not, maybe you need to find another
Oh
doctor
yeah. Oh
or
yeah.
something. Advocate
hmm
for yourself.
Yeah.
You know your body better than
hmm
anyone. If
hmm
something is wrong, something is wrong.
Right. Right. And it's funny because we do know that, right? We know something is not quite right. Now, could we have mentally convinced ourselves of that? Sure.
Absolutely.
Right. But at the same point, it's there. I mean, I had a scan for something, and it was funny. I told my oncologist, I said, my right arm or my left arm, because cancer is on the left side. And so I said, my left arm gets really sore. And I said, now I know exactly what it is. It's when I
Mhm.
sit at my computer too long. I'm pretty sure I'm getting muscle spasms, right? Because if I stretch and it goes away. And so what I was wanting was for them to order physical therapy. Made sense to me, right?
Right.
And my nurse practitioner looked at me and she said, we haven't done a PET scan in a while because there's been no reason.
Right.
And she said, let's do one because we can put down pain in the thing, right?
Hmm.
And so, I go merrily in, I have my PET scan, whatever's there is nothing. And they said, yes, we're going to order physical therapy. And they said, however, and that's the one that gets you right.
Yeah.
And she said there are lesions on your thyroid, and that did turn out to be cancer, but we caught it when it was itsy bitsy teeny easy to treat, simply remove the thyroid. But it was so funny because we wouldn't have caught it until I was symptomatic.
Right.
And so it was just a total fluke that we caught that. But yeah, I knew something was going on. And my doctor went, okay, we'll order the test.
Yeah. That's one of the biggest things that
Mm-hmm.
I learned was to advocate for myself. I have
Mm-hmm.
just run into so many people
Mm-hmm.
that are just shocked. Like my
Mm-hmm.
doctor talked to me about lifestyle changes,
Mm-hmm.
diet and
Right. Mm-hmm.
exercise and stuff
Mm-hmm.
like that. And I've said that to some people and just the look on their face, like,
Yeah.
my doctor didn't tell me that. And I'm just like,
No.
oh,
Mhm.
wow.
Yeah. Well, and sometimes you have to ask,
Yes.
and I mention this anytime I'm I do a lot of podcasts. I'm as a guest, right? And I tell them one of the things that I love about my doctor is every exam room, there is a sign on the door that says, if you did not get every question answered, do not leave this room.
Love
Right.
that. Love that.
And there have been times where I've called them back in because I've gone, oh, I forgot.
Wait.
Yes. Yeah. And I also poke my head in. I see my oncologist every 3 months. But like I said, I'm there every 21 days for a treatment. I stop and see her every time. Now I'm very careful. It's like 30 seconds. Hi, how are you? Quick check-in type of thing. But but she also knows that if I say I need to see you,
Right.
then either she or the nurse practitioner is going to see me. And so again, yeah, you absolutely have to advocate for yourself. I had somebody say, oh, but I don't want them to be mad at me. Technically they are your employee,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And would you say that, would you say, well, I don't want to hurt my employees' feelings, I don't want to question what they're doing? No. um
Especially for what you've been through, because like you said, there's a difference between finding something early stage and more
right.
advanced. That's
Oh
going to
yeah.
change
Oh
everything.
yeah, yeah. And of course there are, the people who complain a lot, and
Yes.
that happens. But for the most part, no. And if anything, and this comes back into the whole survivorship thing, we sometimes ignore it.
Yes.
I don't want to deal with it.
Yep.
So, how do you deal with people? I mean, what do you tell people about that? Because we shouldn't be ostriches, but we also shouldn't be chicken little, right? It's bird world.
Yeah. One of the main things, like I said, I focus on is definitely having clients put their health and well-being first.
Mhm,
Because obviously you got an illness, so you
mhm,
didn't do that to
mhm,
begin with.
mhm,
And part of that is just like really connecting with your body.
mhm,
Because like I said, when you know something is wrong. You know something is
Mhm.
wrong. Like you
Mhm.
did when you first started with
Right.
symptoms and stuff. You were like,
Mhm.
I'm going to the doctor.
Mhm.
Something's wrong.
Mhm.
And I was the same way.
Mhm.
So it's really helping people find practices that they can
Mhm.
do that they're used to get them to connect to their body.
Mhm.
Because when something is wrong, you're going to be on
Right.
high alert and
Mhm.
you're going to be on it.
Mhm.
And like I said, if that means you have to get a second
Mhm.
opinion or whatever you got to
Mhm.
do, then it's whatever you have to
Mhm.
do.
Right.
But connecting to yourself and
Mhm.
taking care of
Mhm.
yourself.
Right. And of your loved ones too, right?
Yes.
We look at our partners and we know, that bumpy thing was not on their thigh before.
Hmm.
Or, they've got a strange cough. What's going on with that? And let's be honest, sometimes we have to like shove the men in our lives in to go to the doctor. Um,
Yes.
but whether it's your kids and your coworkers, your friends,
Or sometimes your pet.
right. I
My
know.
dog diagnosed
Mhm.
me. She's the
Mhm.
whole reason that I went to
Yes.
the doctor.
Yes, and I had somebody tell me that they with the same thing, and it's really funny. I mean, there was we have beagles, and they're like whatever, bleh, they don't snuggle, they don't do anything. And a couple weeks ago, I had a bad day. Now I have chronic pain, because of just everything I've been through. Plus, one of the drugs that I take for breast cancer, I take letrozole, which you wouldn't take because you're young. Letrozole is given to those of us who are more mature. And to be honest, okay, so you get them when you've been through menopause,
Right.
and so you get letrozole, and it like big letters says will not may will cause bone pain and possibly osteoporosis. And I've never talked to somebody who has taken it that has not had bone pain. Now,
Right.
okay, I told you you're going to get it, so we went, okay, well, I'm going to get it. So I don't know, maybe it's self-fulfilling prophecy. But yeah, so I have kind of this chronic pain thing going on, and I hit evening, and I was at an 8 on the pain scale. I mean, and I hadn't done anything different. I mean, it wasn't, and but it was my whole body. I mean, it was just some truck ran me over. And so I, go to spend time with my dogs. And one of them, God bless his little fuzzy heart, laid on my chest and just, right? And and I'm like, now I had a double mastectomy and I didn't have reconstruction. So you have, this weight, and I'm like, I can't breathe. you know?
Yeah.
But at the same point, and he does not do that. It
Mhm.
was very comforting that he did that. And pretty soon I'm like, okay, Hammy, I feel better. You can get down now. I didn't, but yeah, it was just bizarre that he knew I
They
was
know.
not feeling good. And and I mean, we trust dogs to know when someone needs insulin or is maybe going to have a seizure. They've
Mhm.
gone through those special trainings. So dogs, there is something that they know. I mean, they sense it, they smell it, whatever it is. And so yeah, it is something that pay attention. If your dog is like
Yes.
scratching at a certain point on your body
Yep.
over and over again, he's not saying pet me. He's saying
Yeah.
there might be something here.
Yeah. Yeah. So Halo, our morning routine was I walked her and then I did yoga
Mm-hmm.
and then got ready for work.
Mm-hmm.
And every time I would do the back positions laying on my back, she would
Mm-hmm.
come stand over me and put her nose on my tumor.
Mm-hmm.
I could not feel it at
Right.
first, but like as the
Mm-hmm.
weeks progressed,
Mm-hmm.
about week 2 or 3, I could
Mm-hmm.
kind of feel something.
Right.
And then came that breast cancer pain that I had never felt before. And I
Right.
was like,
Which is a
something is
weird, I didn't have that because I didn't have a tumor, but yeah, it's
yeah,
weird.
it's like
Mm-hmm.
this burning,
Mm-hmm.
shooting, just like you stop dead in your
Mm-hmm.
tracks.
Right.
It's
Somewhere it catches a nerve, right?
yes,
Mm-hmm.
horrible pain that I
Mm-hmm.
have never experienced
Mm-hmm.
before. And it started being more consistent.
Mm-hmm.
At first I was just having them a couple times a
Mm-hmm.
day, and then it was just like
Mm-hmm.
every hour, and
Right.
I'm like, I have to go to the
Mm-hmm.
doctor.
Mm-hmm.
But
Something's going on. Mm-hmm.
yeah, if it wasn't
Mm-hmm.
for her doing that, because
Mm-hmm.
she was 8 at the time, she had
Mm-hmm.
never done anything like that.
Mm-hmm.
When I would do yoga, she would come lay beside me or
Right.
pet me or
Mm-hmm.
bring me a
Mm-hmm.
toy, but she would never do anything like
Mm-hmm.
that. And then for her to put her nose right on my tumor.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And for anyone who's like skeptical, like, oh, your dog was
Mm-hmm.
just no.
Mm-hmm.
So after my surgery, I
Mm-hmm.
came home,
Mm-hmm.
I got in bed with her,
Mm-hmm.
and she went and she put her nose where my tumor used to
Mm-hmm.
be. And her tail just starts wagging, and she gave me kisses, and I know that was her telling me it was
Yeah,
gone.
it's gone. Yeah.
It's gone,
Oh yeah.
mama.
Yeah. And it is the cells there are different. So there is
Yes.
going to be a change. I mean, it is going to, I don't, obviously they can sense that there's an odor or something,
Right.
but it is
Yeah.
something that is different.
Yeah. And when you just have that really close bond to an animal,
Mm-hmm.
she is my baby.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have
Mm-hmm.
kids. She was my
Right.
baby.
Mm-hmm.
We were just so close and we did everything
Mm-hmm.
together. So I trusted
Mm-hmm.
her,
Right.
when she
Right.
was doing
Mm-hmm.
that. Like she doesn't do something like
Mm-hmm.
that. Something's up.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And yeah, I mean, pay attention to that. Like we were saying, pay attention to your friends, your kids, because we'll notice things, like, and did you know you've got kind of and it's kind of weird to say this, right? But I think once we're, in that club, we can,
Yeah.
do you know you've
Yeah.
got kind of an unusual mole on your back because they like can't see it, right?
Right.
And just things like that. I remember one time, listening to somebody and thinking that cough is not right.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put it together with several other things, and I'm like, there's a problem, but it was no, blah blah blah. And unfortunately, there was a problem, and 6 weeks later, she was gone. Now, it was going to happen that way. I mean, there was not, because everything was so far advanced. But yeah, sometimes we pick up on things, hey, or just like we might pick up that someone is showing maybe some early signs of dementia or
Right.
Parkinson's or some of those various things. We can catch those things that people, and sometimes it's the people closest to you aren't going to see it,
Yep.
because if it's something gradual, you just got used to it.
Right. Oh, they're aging. They're getting
Mm-hmm.
older. Yeah.
Right. Right. And so advocate for your friends and your family also.
Yeah. If you see something,
Mhm.
say something.
Right. Yeah, I love that saying, right?
Yeah.
um you know let's come back to you're in survivorship mode.
Uh-huh.
And we all, and it's funny, I told people I'm not a fan of the word survivor. It's
Uh-huh.
just me. But I was a survivor 30 seconds after they told me I had cancer, because to me, I
Mm-hmm.
was it, whatever it is, I was going to get past it.
Right.
And so I was going to survive, right? And so we all have different terms and all sorts of things. But survivalship mode, and we kind of mentioned it, is the hunker down mode, the I don't want anything else to affect me, and as opposed to thriving. So
Mm-hmm.
kind of talk to us about that. How do you convince people, okay, it's good to still be on alert, all of those things, but you need to start thriving.
Yeah. Survival mode is just when you're kind of living your life on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
you're just going through the motions of
Mm-hmm.
things. You're not happy. You're not doing things that you want to do. You're not taking care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself. You put other people's needs and everything
Mm-hmm.
above yours.
Mm-hmm.
Um, as opposed to thriving is when you have healthy coping mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
You can self-regulate.
Mm-hmm.
You make time to take care of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
There's a huge contrast
Mm-hmm.
between
Right.
those.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, I get, we all have bills, we all have
Mm-hmm.
to pay money,
Mm-hmm.
but you can also do that while doing something that you love.
Right. Like
You
you
don't have to
said,
be,
you were taking
yep,
certification classes during chemo. Oh my
yeah,
gosh. Mm-hmm.
yeah. It was just something to focus my attention on
Mm-hmm.
and alchemize everything that I was going into
Mm-hmm.
something positive because
Right.
it lit me up. I was excited.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to be able to do that at not 100%,
Mm-hmm.
and still pass that class, I was just
Right.
like,
Oh my.
holy crap, when I am at 100%,
Yeah. Whew.
woo,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it was very motivating. But, you know, when you think about it, a lot of us, I realize I lived most of my life in
Mm-hmm.
survival mode.
Mm-hmm.
I lost my family all
Mm-hmm.
within the span of a year of
Mm-hmm.
each other,
Mm-hmm.
and there's really no way to just process that.
Mm-hmm.
Everything happened so quickly and it
Mm-hmm.
was just like one thing, then another thing, then
Mm-hmm.
another thing. And, you also start to go through the grieving process,
Mm-hmm.
but you have so many other things to do too.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
a lot of us have just been carrying around so much distress and
Mm-hmm.
stress from our childhoods, from relationships,
Mm-hmm. Right.
and it's our normal,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
And it leads to you getting sick.
Mm-hmm.
It just does.
Mm-hmm.
So, like I said, it's just helping people become aware of them being stuck in survival
Mm-hmm.
mode, not taking care of
Mm-hmm.
themselves, not having healthy boundaries,
Mm-hmm.
and saying, okay, so you lived your life all like this,
Mm-hmm.
yet me and you are
Mm-hmm.
sitting here coaching, so
Mm-hmm.
something's
Right,
not
right. Mm-hmm.
working. So like, what can we do
Mm-hmm.
to move you forward?
Mm-hmm.
What can we do to find things that do help you move
Mm-hmm.
forward? And that's what it's about. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just really fulfilling for me to see people that come to me in their
Mm-hmm.
first session and they just have this laundry list of things,
Mm-hmm.
this, to watching them just progress
Mm-hmm.
and, embrace themselves and grow
Right.
into their
Mm-hmm.
own. Like, I'm not surviving
Mm-hmm.
anymore. I
Mm-hmm.
quit my job and I
Mm-hmm.
started my business and, I have a better relationship,
Mm-hmm.
with people in my life,
Right.
all
Mm-hmm.
because they were brave enough to turn that mirror
Mm-hmm.
around and look inside and say,
Mm-hmm.
this isn't working
Mm-hmm.
and I deserve more.
Right. Right. And you mentioned it. I think one of the key things for people to remember is, yeah, we're focused on cancer because that is our journey,
Yep.
but survivorship, is so many things.
Yeah.
Abusive relationships,
Yep.
toxic parents. It
Yep.
could be that you had a horrible professional experience, whatever it is, where again we just kind of shut down, right?
Yep.
And the bad part is that we think, I'm going to protect myself, which we are. And I'm going to fix my camera here real quick. It got real fuzzy.
Okay.
Um, and there we go. Nope, I'm still fuzzy. That's all right. I'm just going to be fuzzy. And so, and it is survivor mode is also protecting, right?
Mhm.
So we're going to
But
protect ourselves.
that wall that's protecting you is also blocking your blessings,
Right.
which you have to
And
move.
in so many cases, then we end up repeating what we were doing,
Absolutely.
and I'm thinking in particular about, people in abusive relationships. They know, I mean, they know it's not healthy. They know, physically, mentally, all of those various things, but they keep picking the same type of person.
Hmm.
And in many cases, that is because they believe that's the only type of person for them. Nobody else would want them. It's their fault, and all of those things. And yeah, I love that you say turn the mirror around and look and go, wait a minute, I am better than that, and I deserve better.
Yep. Because a lot of us, I realized, once I started working on myself and getting counseling, that like a lot of these burdens I were
Mm-hmm.
carrying were not mine.
Right.
They were
Mm-hmm.
burdens
Mm-hmm.
that other people put on me. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm just like, this isn't even mine. Why
Mm-hmm.
am I carrying this around?
Right. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I know that's the truth for a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people,
Mm-hmm.
and it especially sucks, like you said, when you're
Mm-hmm.
going through any kind of health
Mm-hmm.
crisis because, like, you don't have the bandwidth for anything
Mm-hmm.
else.
Right.
You're like, hey, I'm fighting for my life. I don't
Mm-hmm.
have time to hear about your relationship drama.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not trying to
Mm-hmm.
be rude. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
being real. Like,
Right.
how would you
Mm-hmm.
feel if you were
Mm-hmm.
in my shoes and I just came to you
Mm-hmm.
and emotionally dumped on you?
Mm-hmm. Right.
It's not fun and
Mm-hmm.
it's not fair.
Mm-hmm.
So that really just puts things in perspective
Mm-hmm.
because, like I said, when you come on the other side of that and you start to get back into normal life, for me, was when all these stressors came at me,
Mm-hmm.
I was just like, oh, wait a minute. I didn't handle that in a
Mm-hmm.
healthy way.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have healthy boundaries.
Right.
And then, when I did establish those, you're going to get pushback.
Mm-hmm.
Some people are going to
Mm-hmm.
be pissed, but that's not your problem.
Mm-hmm. Right. Right. And I love that, the thriving, the going beyond, whatever we want to call it, it is so interesting to see because it's, and some of it could be things, simple things like more exercise, eat better,
Mhm.
things like that, right? But it's also getting rid of the toxic people in your life. Some I'm kind of stuck with, but I can limit the time that I spend with them. I told somebody the other day, yeah, I know what's going on in the world, but I don't watch 24/7 news. And
Not
yeah,
healthy.
right. Yeah, for anybody. I mean,
Yeah.
and but so many times, and you've seen this, and we were talking about this before, especially with somebody's career. They
Mm.
think that's not really where my passion is. So, talk to us a little bit more about how you can convince somebody what's your passion? Maybe they just turn it into a hobby or whatever, but how do you
Yeah.
get them past that? But I need to be here. I've worked for this company for 20 years or
I
been
put
in
in
this
all this
industry
work,
or
even though
whatever.
I cry when I'm sitting
Yeah.
in the car before I
I
go in the
hate
building.
Monday mornings, right? Mm-hmm,
Yeah.
mm-hmm.
Or you have Monday mornings every day of the week.
Yes.
For
Mm-hmm.
me, the most important thing is to look at your core values.
Okay.
Those change
Mm-hmm.
over time,
Mm-hmm.
because for
Right.
me, when I first got into
Mm-hmm.
corporate world,
Mm-hmm.
I would see this badass, boss babe.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I want to
Mm-hmm.
be her. I want to be the CEO. And I started climbing the ladder, and then I
Mm-hmm.
was like, wait a minute, this is not
Right.
if,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
me just living here, working
Mm-hmm.
all the time is, what gets me there. I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
And it really hammered it in after I
Mm-hmm.
got diagnosed with cancer. I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't want to do that.
Right.
That's
Right.
not.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just really looking at your core values.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what is important to you?
Mm-hmm.
Is it harmony in
Mm-hmm.
your life? Okay, well then working 80 hours a
Mm-hmm.
week it
Right.
doesn't
Not
align
gonna
with
work.
that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not going to
Yeah.
work. So yeah, when
Mm-hmm.
I coach with people, one of the first things I do, exercise with them, is I give them a spreadsheet with
Mm-hmm.
like their core values.
Mm-hmm.
Pick out what's important to you,
Mm-hmm.
what you want to align with. And it's funny because a lot of times,
Mm-hmm.
some people think it's one thing and then they
Mm-hmm.
really get to thinking about
Right.
that and they're like, no, wait,
Mm-hmm.
actually, this is
Mm-hmm.
my core value
Right.
now.
Mm-hmm.
So that helps people a lot to move along,
Mm-hmm.
because anytime, like you said, you get stuck in a situation, you
Mm-hmm.
go back to that job, you're just like,
Mm-hmm.
wait, this isn't in alignment
Mm-hmm.
with values.
Mm-hmm.
And if it's not, then it can't be in my life because I'll just
Mm-hmm.
stay stuck here.
Right.
So
Right.
that's a real motivating factor to
Mm-hmm.
bring awareness,
Mm-hmm.
to people, to
Mm-hmm.
help them be brave and take that
Mm-hmm.
leap of faith and bet
Mm-hmm.
on themselves.
Right. Yeah, and the funny thing is, it's easier to do that once we've gone through a life-threatening illness,
Absolutely.
right? Because the
Absolutely.
really scary thing is it puts a lot of things into perspective,
It
right?
does.
The why am I doing this? And I mean, there were 3 times where my husband was told they weren't sure I was going to make it. And I remember hearing some of the conversations and thinking, wait, I get to vote on that.
I am
um
here.
yeah, I can hear
Yeah.
you. But at the same point, I also, now think I'm not going to put up with that. I'm not going to do that. And really you get the life is too short. I mean, you really do understand it. I mean, that's very cliche, but it is so true when you do realize, whoa, life is too short.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
And you just go for
Mm-hmm.
what lights you up,
Mm-hmm.
and you
Right.
have to have, I'm not going to lie to you, you have to have an unbelievable amount of faith that
Mm-hmm.
things are going to work out for
Right.
you.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized, just the contrasting difference between, when I was in corporate life and
Mm-hmm.
now, you know, since I started following my purpose, like
Mm-hmm.
everything just started lining up for
Mm-hmm.
me.
Right.
I had to let go of the outcome.
Mm-hmm.
I had to let go of the
Mm-hmm.
how and when, but everything just started
Mm-hmm.
slowly
Mm-hmm.
happening, and I look at it now and I'm like, I'm living the life that I always wanted to live right
Mm-hmm.
now.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you just have to stop
Mm-hmm.
and really appreciate your progress and how
Right.
far that you've
Mm-hmm.
come.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. One of the other things that I think a lot of times we forget about while we're dealing with all of this is our caregivers.
Mm,
Because they've got many of the same things, but
yep.
and I was talking to somebody the other day, and they were saying, their husband was saying, why are you worrying about me? You're the one who's sick. But it's like, yeah, but we got to worry about you. And and it gets hard because, right, we are concerned about those. But have you found that caregivers go through a lot of these same challenges?
Absolutely. I've been a caregiver,
Mm-hmm.
so, I've had
Mm-hmm.
all the perspectives on the
Mm-hmm.
cancer journey. And, you just feel so helpless.
Right.
There's nothing you can do. It's just like you're
Mm-hmm.
standing there just watching, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, this train run into this person
Right.
that you love and care
Mm-hmm.
for so
Mm-hmm.
deeply, but there isn't a damn thing you can do
Mm-hmm.
about it.
Mm-hmm.
It's so hard,
Mm-hmm.
but I know for me, and I know most survivors will say that, I get a lot of people who are just like, I don't know what to do. I don't know
Mm-hmm.
what to say. I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
to, and I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
what you just said is what you need to say to them.
Right.
Like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what to do. I don't, but like,
Mm-hmm.
I want you to know that
Mm-hmm.
I'm here.
Right. I get it. Mm-hmm.
Yes, I'm
Mm-hmm.
here. I get it. And
Mm-hmm.
as far as like self-care goes, if you are taking care of someone, hindsight 2020, I
Mm-hmm.
wish I would have done when I was in that
Mm-hmm.
position. It's just like, hey, let's do self-care together.
Mm-hmm.
I bought some face masks.
Mm-hmm.
I bought
Mm-hmm.
some foot scrub. We're
Mm-hmm.
just going to sit here,
Right.
watch a
Mm-hmm.
movie, and take care of
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Right.
Just to take that pressure off and
Mm-hmm.
to really connect with them and
Mm-hmm.
just know that they're there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to like go off and buy them all these expensive
Mm-hmm.
things. Like just spend time with them so
Mm-hmm.
they know like, hey, I'm here for you,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you need.
Mm-hmm. Right. And recognize that they might need breaks and things like
Yes.
that.
Don't take it
And
personally.
yeah,
Don't
yeah,
take it
yeah.
personally.
And now, it's like, yeah, but I'm here and I'm sick and I'm pitiful. And what do you mean you want to take a walk? Well, you know what? They need to take that walk. And if they were
Yes.
brave enough to tell you, I need a break, then let them take that break.
Yeah.
Be sick and pitiful all by yourself. They'll be back.
You
And
probably need a break yourself.
yeah.
So
Oh yeah. But to me, it's like all I have to do is make an I'm in pain face. And my
Mhm.
husband is like, oh my God, oh my God. And that breaks my heart, right?
Yeah.
And so, when just all of those things. And let's be honest, I can't imagine being a caregiver of a child and having to
Yeah.
deal with all that. I mean, that's got to be the worst possible thing. And, so I want to encourage the people who are listening or who are watching this, remember the caregivers. Can you give them a break?
Yeah.
Can you call and say, hey, Marissa, can I come in and sit with, your person so that you can go for a walk, or,
Yeah.
can I bring you guys dinner or whatever? But remember that sometimes those caregivers are actually dealing with more, because we're like, okay, I got
More.
cancer, I'm going to deal with it, right?
Yeah.
And our
And they have
caregivers,
their
yeah,
life plus your illness on
yes,
top of that.
yes,
Yeah.
and so, I've had people, and it's, I always think it's very cute. They tell me, oh, you're my hero. And I think that's very sweet. And I know they mean very well, and I thank them. But of course, to me, our caregivers are the superheroes, right? And same thing
Absolutely.
with the medical doctors.
Yes.
It
The
just,
nurses.
yeah, tell them thank you, tell them you appreciate them.
Make them some
They've
cookies.
got the really hard jobs.
Yes. Yes. In volunteering, like I see that
Mhm.
now. And I tell them
Mhm.
all the time, like,
Mhm.
I don't know how you guys do it.
Right. Oh
Most of the
yeah.
patients are great, but
Mhm.
there's some people
Mhm.
that just have a really negative attitude and
Right.
take their stuff
Right.
out on the
Mhm.
nurses. And it's like, they're just trying to help you.
Mhm. Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
they're just
Right.
trying to help you.
Right.
It's important.
Mhm.
Self-care is important for everyone.
Mhm.
It's important for the
Mhm.
person, the patient. It's
Mhm.
important for the caregiver.
Mhm.
Like you said, it is actually
Mhm.
normal for you to
Mhm.
say, you know what? Mom is going to come and sit
Mhm.
with you for a while
Mhm.
because like there's stuff that I need to do.
Right. Right.
It's just so
Mhm.
important. Like whenever you get burned out and you
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
push your body to the
Mhm.
point of exhaustion,
Mhm.
you're not helping anyone.
Right. Right.
Now you're
Well,
in the same
mhm,
situation.
yeah. I tell people it's the airplane mask thing.
Hmm.
Put your mask on first before you can take care of anyone else.
Yep.
And so that means, trying, if at all possible, to get as much sleep as you can,
Yep.
to try to be eating as well as you can.
Yep.
All of those various things. But realize that it's your mental health. And so you might, as a caregiver, might need to be talking with a counselor, a minister, a whoever.
Absolutely. Find a support group. There's
Yeah.
plenty of
Yeah.
support groups too.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yes.
Right. But yeah, I think we forget that in many, many ways it's harder on them, because they're dealing with everything that they're dealing with. We're
Yep.
just kind of plugging along, right?
Yeah.
You know,
You've reached
mhm.
your limit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the other thing is, our friends, right? And all those, I laugh. I had somebody that asked me, hey, are you still dealing with that cancer thing? I'm like, well, yeah. I mean, that wasn't, but we've mentioned they don't understand. And so we need to give them grace. I've had people
To a
who,
point.
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. And like we were doing business planning, and it was like, for me it's now I have, aside, I've had, yes, 3 cancer diagnoses in 10 years, but nothing in between. I mean, I'm almost at, well, I would be at my 10-year mark of nothing for stage 4 breast cancer, which, hello, party time, right? um and but it's still hard for me to think about what am I going to be doing 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and and I recognize the dichotomy of it, right? I should be planning for those things, but also it is hard to think, I'm going to, what if the back to the what ifs. And, and so I was talking to somebody about that, and they said, we don't understand. And I mean, they really didn't,
Right.
but then I got that you're manifesting it by wishing it. I'm like, no, I'm being realistic. And I said, I get that, you, and that, and I said, but understand, and I mentioned it, that shadow is there, that elephant is in the room, that whatever, am I still going to plan for 5 and 10 years? Yes. But at the same point, it is sometimes a challenge to be doing that. But having goals, I mean, like I do another podcast called Cancer and Comedy with this wonderful gentleman who has prostate cancer, and he is also a retired minister. And we talk about goals and things. And he said, his pertain to his granddaughters. He's going to live to see them graduate from high school. He's going to live to see them get married. He's going to live to have great grandchildren. Those are fabulous. I love that. And does he do his checkups, all those things? Yes. But it is kind of a weird situation.
You have to have a strong enough why,
right.
to get to those goals. And like you said, usually after you go through any kind of health crisis, to be honest with you, just wanting to live your
right.
life and thrive is a strong enough why, because you know what happens when you don't.
Right. Yeah.
So that's important. And as far as friends go, you're going to have some people that just cannot take their rosy glasses off
right.
of the old version.
Oh, yeah. Or can't deal with it at all. I lost
friends
friends during this process.
Same. That is a very common thing. Not just friends, a lot of family, know. So
and
many
they
people
don't want to talk about it.
They want to sweep it under the rug, and not to say that you want to sit there and talk about it all day.
Yes. Oh, poor me.
Acknowledge that this is happening.
Right.
Have compassion for me. If I don't feel good, if you want to take me somewhere and I don't want to go, accept that for face value. You're not in my shoes. You don't understand. I just remember I connected with one of my friends after I was done with treatment, and she was talking about coming to visit and all this stuff, and she was like, "Oh, I want to do this and this and this," and naming all this stuff, and I was just like, "Okay, but I don't do that anymore," And I just remember as the conversation went on, she finally said, "I just don't know who you are anymore," and I was like, "You're right." It seems like the only thing we have in common right now are memories. And that's okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
But I'm a different version of myself, and I'm not going to digress back to a lifestyle and a mental state that got me sick.
Right. Well, so I mean, it's kind of like, when we are, contacting our friends, and I'm like you, I don't have kids. And they're, it's like, oh, I want to go do this and this and this. And they're like, okay, but I've got soccer. I've got this. I've got to help with homework. And, and we're like, I don't understand. And it's actually, it's part of life. And I got all fuzzy again. I don't know what's going on with my camera. There, I'm back. But it's, for people who are listening, it's really funny. But we all go through these different stages in our life, and I, the friends that I lost, I thought, well, obviously that friendship had run its course, but I also gained people during the process that I never would have probably connected with otherwise. And so, it's like that, we do that no matter what in our lives.
Absolutely. It's just hard because we tend to hold on to things that are familiar to us, even if they're unhealthy, because it's familiar, and you have this fear of, leaving that place or that person that just keeps you tied to it. But it's but you're going to stay in that same space until, you get brave and make a choice to step out of it. And you have to understand that everything you want is right in front of your face. You just have to step towards it.
Right. And that can be really, really scary.
It is.
And so, for those people who are saying, I'm ready, but I'm scared, they need to reach out to you. So how do they find you, and what are the services that you provide?
Okay, the services I provide, I do coaching.
Mhm.
Locally here in Texas, I am going to start doing workshops. My next
Okay.
workshop is going to be, I believe, in August. I'm going to
Mhm.
do a release ceremony.
Mm.
There's going to be a little coaching tied into
Mhm.
it, but I'm going to have everyone pretty much write a note to everything, all their
Mhm.
baggage they need to let go
Mhm.
of, and we are going to transmute that
Mhm.
and welcome in what we
Mhm.
want.
Mhm.
Um, so the coaching I offer packages because
Mhm.
I need to stress people like coaching takes time.
Right. This is not a one and done, folks.
It's
So
not
sorry.
a one and done
Mhm.
thing. Like I said, you're dealing with stuff
Mhm.
that you've been carrying around for a
Mhm.
while. It takes
Mhm.
time, but you will
Mhm.
see progress,
Mhm.
as you go along.
Mhm.
And it's those little things that really add up, to be
Mhm.
honest with you.
Mhm.
So I offer different packages.
Mhm.
The least is 3 months because 90 days is usually
Mhm.
when you see a change
Right.
from,
Mhm.
habits,
Mhm.
all the way up to 9 months or a
Mhm.
year. And then you can, on my website, I have just like a little questionnaire
Mhm.
because I like to judge to see
Mhm.
where people are at in their lives to
Right.
make sure
Is
we're a good
this even
fit.
going to work? Mhm.
Is this even going to work? And then from there, if I think we're a good fit, I'll send
Mhm.
you my calendar and
Mhm.
we can set up a discovery
Mhm.
session where we kind of go through
Mhm.
what you want to work on. And, we can
Mhm.
start coaching from there if it's a
Mhm.
great fit.
Right.
Then I'm also on LinkedIn right now. I'm not a huge social media person, so sorry, not really, but I'm
Wow,
a,
you have extra time.
it's just not my thing. I just love connecting with
Mhm.
people one on one in person.
Right. Mhm. As opposed
Um,
to who is this person who's writing this?
Yeah, other than all these
Mhm.
followers, it's just like,
Mhm.
what are you doing?
Mhm.
So, yeah,
Mhm.
you can reach me through
Mhm.
LinkedIn or you'll have the link to my
Mhm.
website
Yep.
on there.
Yep. Mhm.
And I would love to
Mhm.
connect with anyone.
Mhm.
My specialty
Mhm.
is cancer survivorship,
Mhm.
but like if you are a caregiver, if
Mhm.
you've lost someone to
Mhm.
cancer or lost someone in any
Mhm.
kind of way, or if you're just experiencing
Mhm.
burnout or existential crisis where you're
Mhm.
like, I cry before I
Mhm.
go into my job,
Mhm.
like survivorship coaching
Right.
will benefit
Mhm.
you.
Right. And for people who are like, oh, a coach isn't for me, I don't need a coach. I always tell people Michael Jordan and Tiger Woods, everybody like that. John Elway, I'm from Colorado, right?
Yep.
They had and still have coaches.
Yep.
So don't ever think you don't need them. Coaches are someone who, can help you on this journey. And it's perfectly fine. And one of the biggest things that I tell people is one of the absolute strongest things you can do is to say, I need help.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yes.
Right.
There's nothing wrong. It's actually a sign of strength.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Right.
Coaching isn't about you just talking at people and
Mm-hmm.
giving them advice. It's
Mm-hmm.
more of just like, asking people
Mm-hmm.
questions, like I
Mm-hmm.
said, to help them gain awareness to where they are stuck and then
Mm-hmm.
helping them move forward.
Right.
For some people, coaching and therapy are not
Mm-hmm.
the same thing.
No.
I'm not going to
Mm-mm.
go digging into your
Right.
past. Do I
Yes.
want to get
Mm-hmm.
to the root of why you're
Mm-hmm.
stuck? Yes. But
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm not going to have a therapy session with
Right.
you. That's not
Mm-hmm.
what coaching
Mm-hmm.
is. So it's just more about you are
Mm-hmm.
here now, but we want to get you
Mm-hmm.
there. Let's see what's keeping
Mm-hmm.
you stuck, and then we're going to get you
Yep.
there.
Yep.
That's
I
what
love
coaching is.
it. I love it. Well, I really have been having such a great conversation, and I hope people did realize this is a good thing, folks. This is
Yes.
this is not gloom and doom. Um, and so, I can't wait to stay in touch with Marissa. We're thinking about, how can we work together and some things like that. So we'll keep y'all posted. But until then, what final thoughts do you have for everyone?
Just that healing is a gift. It's scary and it's hard, but it is so worthwhile because you get to discover and embrace your true authentic self and live your life instead of living in survival mode. You thrive. And it's very important because there are just so many people out here living in survival mode, and that's just not a way to exist.
I love it. I love it. Well, I'm Deb Creer. I've been having such a wonderful conversation with Marissa Rusnow. And until next time, everyone have a great day.
Tune in for our next program for even more trends, best practices, and techniques for how to make your business a success. The Business Power Hour, hosted by Deb Creer, is proud to be part of the C-Suite Network.